And good morning, everyone. Welcome to HinduLounge. Namaste. Thank you for joining. This is HinduLounge. HinduLounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact. Hindu Pact is Hindu policy research and advocacy collective. It is an initiative of World Hindu Council of America, and HinduLounge comes live every Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern. And here we talk about contemporary American Hindu issues, and we talk about Hindu issues that are global. And today is one of those days where we're going to talk about global issues. And with that, let me welcome our co-host, our main host rather, Utsav Chakrabarti. Utsav is the executive director of Hindu Pact. Thank you for joining. Welcome to the show. And we're going to talk about an interesting topic today. Just as a brief introduction myself, I'm Ajay Shah. I'm the president of World Hindu Council of America. Utsav, we are going to talk about the first president of India, a woman president, a second woman president, but the first president who comes from what we call the Vanvasi community. And Vanvasi is the people who are traditionally who have lived in forest. And her life story is very, very inspirational, and we are going to talk about it. Not only she inspires, we put in the title, we said inspires all Hindus, but really in reality she inspires everyone in the world. If you look at her life story and how she has gone through, and how in her lifetime she found solace in Hindu dharma, and that is something that we need to talk about. It's inspirational, as I said. And then we'll talk about what people who don't particularly like Hindus, what they are doing to convert these people who live in forests to to other religions. With that, Sada, welcome. And you're on mute, Sada.
Thank you, Ajay bhai. Thank you,
All right,
and
welcome.
welcome. So, I have to say that the election of the new president of India, Droupadi Murmu, has a lot of relevance for the 1.3 billion people of India. No doubt, it is extremely important for them. But that is not the only reason we have that topic today. The reason we have that topic is, and you will see that in the rest of our show as we go forward, is that it has implications globally. It has implications in America specifically. Uh, and we will discuss why those implications are there, because her election actually sends a message, not just that India is a country that where equity is critical to the country's development, and that the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, and his government is actually doing something that people will remember centuries down the road. But it is also important for those who are detractors of the people of India, those who are Hindu haters. And we do, if you are a follower of our channel, if you are, please subscribe and follow our channel if you have not been doing so. EHPA videos. You will see that we have a long thread of conversations in the past where we talk about those who do not want to see Hindus in the future. Literally, they do not want to see us exist, and it is a message to them, and it is a message to those and people and their supporters in America. And as the show progresses, we will see and talk about that as well. So that's why I think it's important for us to talk about this as an American Hindu organization and what it implies for people around the world.
So that with that, here is Droupadi Murmu. She is, she is from the state of Orissa. She comes from a very modest background, even though her father and her grandfather were the head, were the sarpanch, which is the head of the village, elected head of the village. But she had really not, her family had not kind of gone out in big cities and all of that. They lived in a we would consider today to be the forest area or the tribal area. Uh, and here is I will talk about this a little bit more, but upon her election as the president, or actually I think this was right, this is very touching. She actually went to a mandir, and she cleaned the mandir and did the puja, which is the tribal tradition. You first clean the mandir and then you do the puja. And upon her election, I believe this was upon the nomination or election, one of the two, I don't remember quite, but this is how she is committed to her faith, where she attributes a lot of her success to her faith, and that for Hindus all over the world, that is inspirational. The Hindu elected officials who are Hindus in name only, or sometimes not even in name, but here is a person who is going to be soon taking the oath as the president of India, with one and a half, or close to 1.5 billion people now, and she is as humble a devotee as you can be. Here is Droupadi Murmu with her family, and the person in circle here is President-elect Murmu, uh, and with her family. Again, comes from a very modest background in very rural part of India. And so that I'll give you, I don't need to show this slide, but I just tell a little bit about her life story. She was born in a Santali family in the state of Orissa uh, in 1958. So she is actually the youngest president of India at the age of 64. And her father she graduated from the Ramadevi Women's College over there. She married a banker with whom she had two sons and a daughter. So that within the 7 year span between 2009 and 2015, her husband, her two sons, mother, and brother all passed away. Okay, and just think about this. In a 7 year span, she lost her husband, her two sons, mother, and a brother. Okay. Now, you know, uh, they there's very this is when you get tested. She said that she really felt very depressed at one point, that after so many tragedies, uh, and that is when she actually uh, uh, she went to Brahma Kumaris. This is a religious order, a religious order, and she learned Raj Yoga, and she gained a lot of strength. So that I don't mind if you go, if you don't mind, if you can share and play a slide on the brief video on slide number 7, I would appreciate it. So uh, I cannot play it here, so I'm going to because of the limitations of the software. But if you can play that video
let
while
let
I
me
continue. Yeah, so let me continue a little bit about her. She started her career after graduating from college as a teacher, and in a school teacher, and she taught English and Hindi, Odia, math and geography. So she is actually a school teacher, and that you know you know so coming from that background, going to college, studying and becoming a teacher, and then studying in college, and then in late and somewhere along the way, I believe in late 80s, she joined the political field, and she started getting elected. She got elected uh, at the Odisha State Assembly. So with that, let's play a little bit of video. We'll play first couple of minutes of this video, because she talks about how she
वास्तव में मैं यहाँ जब भी जहाँ भी मुझे ब्रह्मा कुमारी बहनों द्वारा बुलाया जाता है, मैं खुशी खुशी इसीलिए आती हूँ, उनका बातें सुनने के लिए मैं आती हूँ, उनसे कुछ फीलिंग्स लेने के लिए मैं आती हूँ, उनके साथ कुछ देर बिताने के लिए मैं एक मौका ढूंढती रहती हूँ कि कुछ देर ही सही आत्मा को थोड़ा शांति मिलता है, ठंडक मिलता है। जिंदगी का सही मायने मैं ढूंढने के लिए कोशिश करती हूँ। मैं ऐसे ये जोगिनी परिवार से कुछ दिन से मैं जुड़ी हूँ। मैं इसीलिए जुड़ी हूँ, जिंदगी का सफर चलते चलते मैं थक गई हूँ, और थकने के बाद ऐसा एक शीतल छाया जो मिले, जहाँ सुकून मिले, शांति मिले, आनंद मिले, प्रेम मिले, ये एक शीतल छाया है। यहाँ प्रयागराज में मैं पहली बार आई हूँ। ये जो अमावस्या तिथि गई, मैंने देखा पेपर में, टीवी में 3 करोड़ से ज्यादा भाई बहन यहाँ गंगा स्नान किए हैं, डुबकी लगाए हैं। डुबकी लगाने से कहते हैं कि जितने भी जिंदगी में जितने भी हम कोई भी कर्म किए हैं, विकर्म किए हैं, ओ ये पानी में गंगा के माँ के गर्भ में, ये तो गंगा जमुना सरस्वती का ये संगम है, ये संगम में बह जाता है। लेकिन मैं कहना चाहूंगी, ये जो बहनें आज बैठे हैं 1937 से, बहनें कोई 50 साल से, कोई 40 साल से, कोई 30 साल से ये गंगा स्नान करते हैं। जल की गंगा नहीं, ये ज्ञान की गंगा में स्नान करते रहते हैं। ये डुबकी केवल 5 मिनट या 10 मिनट नहीं, ये डुबकी दिन भर लगाते रहते हैं। आप सोचिए, जो हम 12 साल या 5-10 साल के बाद हम डुबकी लगाते हैं।
That was fantastic, Ajay
That
bhai.
was fantastic. And I was, Utsada, she gets up at 3 in the morning to do yoga every day. And this was the speech she gave when she was the governor of Jharkhand.
Correct. So there is something interesting, Ajay bhai, that I want to say about her and her election, because since we are discussing about her presidential, how it happened. So you have to understand that like a true democracy, there was an opposition candidate as well in this particular effort, and that opposition candidate initially started off with the help of the main opposition party in India, which is Trinamool Congress now, not the Congress party anymore. But so Congress actually, with the help of the other opposition parties, put up a candidate against her. And initially, that candidate went around seeking support. But by the time the elections actually happened, and in India, the presidential election has an electoral college. It's the prime minister who is elected through people's votes, and the presidential election is elected through delegates. So the way that works is the entire Rajya Sabha, or the upper house of India, votes. The entire Lok Sabha, or the lower house of India, votes, and then every state legislature also votes. So the elected state legislators also vote. So in all of that, by the time Droupadi Murmu's election came between her and the opposition's candidate, the opposition itself melted away. In fact, the chief opposition, which is Mamata Banerjee's Trinamool Congress, uh, actually told its delegates that, you don't have to really vote for our candidate if you don't feel like it. That was the main opposition. So the reason I'm saying this is because uh, now in India, you see that even opposition parties, despite all their shenanigans and things they do, politics is dirty. At the end of the day, they also are beginning to realize in some places, on some issues, that the decisions that were made are are for everybody's benefit, and it's not worth it to actually try to challenge it, because it only helps those who are trying to target India or target Hindus. So this particular case is one such incident. That's something I want to highlight for those of us around the world who are watching this and listening to this. That even the opposition realized that challenging this election was actually not going to benefit their cause as well.
Impeccable character, not just the symbolism of the first tribal, first president from the Vanvasi or the tribal area, but of impeccable character. No allegations of corruption ever. Held office as a governor in a very honorable way, and even the opposition party. I mean, parties actually did not, admired her for a lot of things that she had done. And so here is we pivot a little bit from her personal story to what is happening to the Vanvasi community in India, and why it is important for global Hindus to be aware of, because there is a lot going on. Here also that is the map of India, and this map of India for all our viewers. Take a look at this map of India. The map of India shows in a color coded, annotated way the what Indian Constitution calls the scheduled tribes. It is a constitutional designation from 1950 when the constitution was put in place, and 744
And
tribes
it
across.
is, I must add, Ajay bhai, just
Yeah,
to quickly add, it is a continuation of what the British
correct.
described. So it is actually a little demeaning. But
It is.
such are the things in India, that there are many things in Indian system, in the judiciary, in the political process, that are continuation designations and descriptions. We discussed another on LGBTQ issues also. We had discussed this. There have been so much lethargy in the last 70 years to change things, that some things that are actually not that good are continuing. And the description scheduled tribes is a continuation of the British
The worst one.
nomenclature.
So that yesterday we were at a meeting, both you and I were at a meeting, and I was talking to someone who was not very ingrained in the Hindu advocacy movement, and that person, there was some conversation, and that I mentioned the word, we were talking about the Indian Constitution, and we were talking about how Indian Constitution, has the affirmative action program to bring people to equality and provide equity, actually. And I mentioned the word other backward classes. And he said, well, wait, isn't this very demeaning to call people backward class? And I said, absolutely true. It is not a word, it is not a phrase that I would have ever chosen, but this is an actual phrase that is used in the Indian Constitution.
Mhm.
So you're absolutely right. There are these words which are pretty demeaning phrases, and they are part of Indian Constitution. So you can't really talk about something that is technical and in part of the constitution without actually using that phrase. And I don't know how else to phrase it, especially in context of that particular discussion. So we have used the word Bahujan Samaj and all the other things, but but if you're talking about the actual description in the constitution, that's what it is, right? So you can see the classification of these Vanvasi communities through India, and you can see there are states in northeastern states of India where over 50% of the population is classified by Indian constitution as scheduled tribes, and then bulk of India is about 10%. Overall, the average in India is about 8.9%, as of the latest census, which was in 2011. There's a census that happened last year. The results are not for COVID. It was delayed. I think it is going to happen sometime this year or next year. But this is the it's a substantial minority. It's about 9% minority in India, people who live in the forest lands or Vanvasi area. So the Vanvasi is there's interesting connection with the Hindu history. Okay, so now that we have looked at the Vanvasi community spread across the India, you would say, well, how how far back do they go? How far have been people been living there? What was the interaction with people who lived with the city? If you start thinking, looking at that, if you look at some of the ancient scriptures, historic scriptures, right? These are the scriptures that we would call normally itihas. So the two prominent itihas history books, which are also considered scripture in India, are the Ramayan and the Mahabharata. Now, Ramayan is dated by using the position of the stars that have been described in Ramayan to be, and the birth date of Rama, who people consider to be an avatar of Vishnu, has been determined to be about 5,100 before the Common Era. That's about 7,500 years ago. And people who know the history and the story of Ramayan, Shiram was sent to a 14-year Vanvas. Vanvas means he was for there's a whole Ramayana story, and we won't go into that, but he was asked to go leave his leave his capital in Ayodhya and live in forest for 14 years. And one would and so the names he met people who lived. He met a lot of rishis. He met a lot of kings. He met a lot of people who lived in forests. And in Ramayana, they describe various communities that he met in different parts of India. Because remember, Shiram, when he traveled all the way from Ayodhya to all the way through multiple states to Panchavati, which is now in Maharashtra near Nasik, Karnataka, where Hampi is today. Today's Hampi is, and then it continued down all the way to Sri Lanka. So he obviously came with contact with a lot of people who lived in forests, and there he met certain communities. Three tribes, if I were to use that English phrase, tribes that are mentioned in Ramayana: the Gonds, the Kols, and the Bhils. These tribes exist even today in a continuous history of thousands of years. So they interacted with Shiram. They welcomed Shiram in their community. They accorded a warm welcome to him, and Shiram spent some time with them. Right?
So Ajay bhai, I just wanted to add, since you went into the history of the Vanvasi community, so there is not just in Ramayana and Mahabharata, actually in Mahabharata also, if you know the story of Ekalavya and Dronacharya, Ekalavya was a Bhil. So you will see that in both these epics that date back at least 4,000 plus year before Common Era, so 6,000 years from now at least. There are multiple actually quite accurate analysis of dates, but I'm just giving an overview. These communities have been living almost in the same regions for that much period of time. So the places where Mahabharata mentions the bhils, the places where Ramayan mentions bhils, Gonds, those areas are still have a lot of bhils and Gond population. And similarly, but Draupadi comes from an area which is to the east of the travel path of Bhagwan Shri Ram. So they are the Vanvasi community that Draupadi comes from are the Santal community, which is mostly in Odisha, what is present day Jharkhand, what is present day Bengal, and a little bit what used to be Bengal before, what is present day Bangladesh. Also, there are Santal communities in those places, mostly around the eastern parts of the country. So that's why I am not sure if you find mention of Santals in Ramayana, because most of the Ramayana events, uh, at least the Vanvas events, happened through the central and moved north to south rather than east to west.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. So that in as you just mentioned in Mahabharata. Now, in Mahabharata, the story is that the Pandavas, the two sides, right, and Kauravas and Pandavas, and Pandavas were also subjected to residence in forest for 12 years. Actually, 13, because 12 they could live being recognized, and the 13th year they were expected to live incognito, and those 12 years that or 13 years, should say, they met a lot of people who lived, a lot of communities who lived in forest. And Utsada, if you look at you mentioned Eklavya, but it's not just Eklavya, right? The Pandava brothers, now these are the people who are the direct descendants of King Bharat, after whom the name Bharat, the name of the country, originates from, right, or is named after. The name Bharat comes from King Bharat, and King Bharat, the descendants of King Bharat, are Kauravas and Pandavas. Now, Bhim, being one of the Pandavas, so and a traditional, uh, you know, people who ruled India at that time, thousands of years ago, because Mahabharata, as Utsoda just said, happened 3,500 years, 3,500 before the Common Era, so 5,000 years ago. 30, I believe the exact date is 3023 or something like that. So we're talking about, over 5,000 years ago. Bhim actually marries one of the forest dwelling tribal, quote unquote, tribal women, right? So and to me also, that this is significant, because even at that time, if you look at the Hindu society, there was acceptance of that marriage. So it was not like these the
Not just acceptance, it was almost see, I think historically, until the colonization of the Indian subcontinent by Islamists and Christians, uh, the way people looked at different communities, uh, Vanvasi communities, was not very different from the way people looked at clans. So it was almost, it's like one clan marrying into another. I mean, it's not just that, these Vanvasi communities, you hear about Bhim marrying somebody from the Vanvasi community and having kids and being part of the Mahabharata war. There is also long line of evidence of you know marriage between different clans, including those of Naga clans. So in Mahabharata, you will see there were marriages with Naga clans. Not just so, Nagas were not just in what is present day Nagaland and northeastern part of the Indian subcontinent, but they were also in Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu and Kashmir actually had a long tradition of Naga communities there. So this was something that is very common, and the social relations between these different sub-ethnic groups, I would say, would be almost like those between clans, and it was not looked down upon at all until the time colonization, the religious and theological colonization of the Indian subcontinent began.
So that takes us, and that takes us to our uh, the next segues to the next related topic that we're going to talk about, and that is what is happening in last few years. And actually we can trace it back to last couple of 100 years, right? So that an interesting sometimes things originate in such a way that new terms kind of get inserted in a very subtle way in the vocabulary. And once these new terms get inserted in vocabulary, then a political narrative gets built behind it, which leads to a political movement, and which leads to all kinds of repercussions. Most of them not good, some of them good, but that is what is happening in has happened in India over the last 100 years, right? The word Vanvasi, people who live in forest, is a Sanskrit word describing people who live in forest. Gradually, a new word was introduced, and that word was adivasi. And adivasi is the word which means aboriginal. Why, Utsada, would anyone introduce the word aboriginals instead of using the word Vanvasi?
It's very simple. The word adivasi or aboriginals was a word that white colonizers used to describe native populations that they conquered and quote unquote Christianized. In the case of the Indian subcontinent, two things were being attempted. If they were actually honest, they would describe the entire Hindu community of the Indian subcontinent as aboriginals and adivasis. That's ideally what shade they should have done. But that's not what they did. What the European colonizers did was that they tried to search and divide identities within the Indian subcontinent. And this, imagine, this was happening before there was any DNA evidence, there was any migration, scientific migration pattern evidences. No, this was based on purely whims and fancies of strategic minds and a little bit of linguistic research. That too, not always right. I mean, you know how wrong that can go if you see what Hitler did in Europe. But these guys were coming up with the narrative that the Vanavasis were the people who are the original people of the Indian subcontinent, and everybody else who is urban dweller, or agricultural, pastoral, are migrants from some point in history. And those migrants actually colonized the Vanvasis. And that initial thought was seeded in the by the European colonizers with this small. Imagine the power of these terms. These terms then grew a life of their own. And if you go to today's campuses in America, today's not just America, India also, actually more so in India, all these humanities department, all these, they will produce research after research, in quotes research, thesis after thesis, books after books, validating these colonial narratives and essentially creating this trope of this Mool Nivasi versus Hindu colonizer. And it has now reached a point where we will discuss it, Ajay bhai. I'll give it back to you because there is a lot we want to share about it.
Yeah, this is important, right? I mean, the important reason is that this actually goes back, Utsoda, to the narrative that was built by European invaders. And the narrative that they were trying to build is, look, we are not, India is a country that is built on invasions. There were so many invasions, and Aryans came before that. The Dravidians came, so then Dravidians came, then Aryans came, then Shaks came, and Huns came, and Kushans came, and then then all the different Muslim invaders came, and now Europeans are here. The British are here, the Portuguese are here, the French are here, and so this is not unusual for a country like India to have invasions. So what we're doing is just in a long line of things. You guys are not actually the natural inhabitants of India anyway. So what are you doing opposing the colonialization? You yourself, and because you are a colonialist, you have no right to oppose the British colonialism or French colonialism, or for that matter, Portuguese colonialism. And that was the reason why the word aboriginals or aborigines, or the adivasi, was important for British to use. Okay. And the remnants of British colonialization is today, which is carried out by the left and of the in India, and the and really the missionaries who want to convert a whole bunch of people who live in these forests. They continue to propagate this thought that these are aborigines who have nothing. Now, we in this show, right in the beginning, we showed the historic connection in the Hindu scriptures, in Ramayan 7,000 years ago, in Mahabharata 5,000 years ago. We showed the connection. There's research that shows that these communities have existed in India for 50, 60,000 years. There's a new research that came out in the Nature there's a very reputed scientific magazine called Nature, that actually shows continuous inhabitation of these forests for last 50, 60,000 years, and intermingling between people who live in forest and the people who lived in city. But yet, this is what we see in the Indian papers. Now, Congress, being a political party in India, says we should not use the word Vanvasi, people who live in forest, and Vanabandhu, brothers who live in forest, for tribals. Now, it turned out that this was a phrase that predates BJP, the Bharatiya Janata Party, and for by 30 years or 40 years. So it was used. The same phrases were used even during Congress use. But this is how far we have come in the politics, right? And then if you look at this, these are the some of the left wing you know publications, for lack of better word. They're promoting this idea that the first owner of the land on the face of this earth is the adivasi. He got the natural born rights of citizenship. Such a first citizen in this country is today being denied the identity of indigenous. 7,000 years ago, Shiram visits the forests and he meets the people. He lives with them. He mingles with them. In Mahabharata, one of the main characters is married to one of these one of the women in the Vanvasi community, and the association goes way beyond that. And yet, for political reasons, for other reasons, the narrative being promoted is we are Adivasi, we are not Vanvasi. We are the original people, everyone else is an invader. Okay. And so on and so forth. So this is another news item that came in one of the Indian papers. We are scheduled tribes, not Adivasis. So call us anything but we are scheduled tribes. We are not Adivasis. We are not Adivasis. We are Adivasis. We are not Vanvasis. And this is the news item. And look, it's not like RSS, which Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, is inventing history. What RSS is trying to do is that in this environment, what RSS is trying to do is make people aware. People who live in Vanvasi, one area, or in the forest area, make them aware of their own history, which which is being misrepresented by the Naxalites, the communists, the missionaries, the church over there. Make them aware that here are the stories from Ramayan, here are the stories from Mahabharata, and you've always been Hindus, and you are Hindus. So that thoughts.
No, as I said, Ajay bhai, that it's not just about Congress or RSS or BJP. It's a civilizational paradigm for the people of the Indian subcontinent who believe in their civilization. So that goes back to the Sindhu Saraswati civilization, with all its diversity, with all its migrations, with all its integration. as normal civilizations go through. They believe in the word Vanvasi. They believe in the integrated diversity that their civilization offers. Okay, that's one doctrine, one paradigm. Opposed to that is the paradigm that you just described, that sometimes Congress party followed, that certainly came from the European colonizers, that is very much promoted in international platforms, Western media, as well as in extreme left intellectual circles. That's the second paradigm is that Indian subcontinent is not a civilizational identity. Everything is disjointed, everything is one fighting the other, everybody is divided, everybody should be divided. uh, one group should be played against the other group. Every group should be subdivided based on language, based on ethnicity, based on clan. In that architecture, you have the adivasis, who should be fighting the urban people, who should be fighting somebody else on the basis of caste, who should be everybody should be fighting everybody should be claiming superiority over the other. And that way you keep the pot boiling, which is exactly what the colonizers did. And then you can, it's a resource rich subcontinent, so you can do whatever you want with that. You can make the people be coolies, and you can suck out the resource that you need to do. So people in the Indian subcontinent have to understand these two paradigms and what each brings to them. And when you see these two different paradigms and what each one of them brings to you figure out which one works for you. You want to be a civilizational identity that is respected in the world, uh, has immense diversity along ethnic lines, along philosophical lines, but is bound by a dharmic civilization. Or you want to be constantly fighting with each other for resources, which is being sucked away by somebody else who is telling you what to do by eating your head up. Figure it out yourself.
Yeah, and also there is sinister motives behind it, right? I mean, I think you look at the movement that is going on for last few decades in these tribal regions in India, or tribal belt as they call it, and I would call it the Vanvasi region in India. There has been an effort to create a new a religious identity, even though these people, the people who live there, worship Shiram and worship Ganpati in their own way. But that is true for any Hindu, right? If you go to Kolkata, if you go to Gujarat, if you go to Hyderabad, if you go to Kerala, or if you go to Kashmir, the mode of worship, the way the deities are represented are different. And still the people are worshiping the same core principles, believing the same core philosophy, and are representation of the same gods and goddesses in a way people perceive in that region. And that is actually true for even other religions, which are Middle Eastern religions as well. The representation, if you put in a church, can vary from region to region. Now, this what the sinister comes to Tada is they are now inventing. They are saying people are saying that, oh, look, you're not Hindus. You have a religion, two religions here, and you can put that or in the census. When the census order comes to you and asks you what your religion is, say your religion is Sarna. Nobody ever heard of the word Sarna. So Sharna is now becomes a religion, and all the people are supposed to identify as Sharna, or are supposed to identify in one of these 82 different regions, two or three being a little bigger than the rest of them, Sharna being one of them. Why do they do that? The reason why, because when they do that, then they are now disassociating these people from Hindu Dharma. And once you disassociate these people from Hindu Dharma, it is easy to convert them, easy to make them without religion and be extreme communist, like in India, what people call Naxalites or Maoites, or you now offer them a new religion to convert to as Christianity. So, your thoughts?
So this is the fun part about this, and this is the part that defies logic and actually can very easily be used to expose the agenda. Okay, the narrative that is presented by the Maoists, the global left in India as well as outside India, but Christian evangelists. It's a very funny intersection of different people, usually opposed to each other, but on this issue coming together. The narrative they present is that, despite 7,000 years of religious congruity, the Vanvasis and the pastoral Hindus or the urban Hindus are not the same. They are different. They're completely different religions. 7,000 years of religious growth. I mean, imagine that. But that is fine. That is, unacceptable for them to be Hindus, for Vanvasis to be Hindus, despite 7,000 years of congruity and equanimity with the rest of the Hindu population. But you leave that religion, that 7,000 years of past aside, and be yourself. How can be yourself? By following a religion that comes 20,000 away from that originated in the Middle East 2,000 years ago and is now practiced 30,000 miles away in America and Europe. Okay, take that religion, and then you will be actually one with with who you are, your identity. So this is BSing at its worst, and this needs to be challenged at this level by exposing those who do this. And this, you have to understand, this is being done very seriously. There are millions of Vanvasis who have been converted to Christianity using these tactics during the British period, after the British period, and it continues even now. And their supporters are all over the world, including in the US Congress, and we will show you how it works. So this is, if this is not, as I said, breaking India effort, then I don't know what is. And I think this presidential election actually sends a message to everybody around the world that you can try as hard as you can. You may get a little success here and there. It would be tactical successes, but at the larger doctrinal and civilizational level, you're not going to go anywhere, and you will lose in this breaking India effort.
So that brings us to an interesting point, right? Because the just while India is going through this amazing historic transformation, into political transition, not transformation, transition from a president who is Dalit, President Ramnath Kovind, who is a Dalit, to the first woman tribal, Vanvasi president. Here in America, at home, our home, there is a congressman from San Diego, Juan Vargas. He brings out a House resolution. And so tell us about the resolution and what it's trying to do, and why is it out there? And you're on mute, so that.
I'm sorry. So what Juan Vargas does is, this is what I was talking about in terms of Maoists and Christian evangelists, Christian missionaries operating in Vanvasi areas. They have operated for generations. They have converted thousands of people. In fact, in India, many of these converts actually do not use their Christian names so that they can benefit from affirmative action. I personally know many such people, but it is there. It has happened. You cannot, we can try to change it, reverse it through education efforts, which is happening too. But it is here to stay for the short term. And what Juan Vargas, who is a congressman from south of California, on the border with Mexico, very Catholic congressman from the Democratic Party, he introduced a resolution commemorating Stan Swami, who is a convert to Christianity from one of the Vanvasi communities. Not just that, he is also a pro-Maoist. Like, his entire case was pending in the courts in India. After years of analysis and years of investigation, he was arrested and refused bail by the courts. And you have to understand, the judiciary in India is not necessarily government friendly, as you will see throughout the history of reportage and decision making by the Indian judiciary. Just recently, a pro-Islamist guy was released by the judiciary. On bail, So it's not like the judiciary and the government in India have any favorability towards each other. It's actually the opposite. Uh, Despite that, this Maoist was refused bail by the courts, and Juan Vargas introduces a resolution commemorating this terrorist. I'm using the word terrorist very carefully here. Stan Swamy was undergoing investigation as a terrorist who was involved in violence a big part of his life. So that is the level of interference and global backing that many of these people who are fishing in the Vanvasi waters of India have.
Yeah.
And in fact, this entire effort was supported by organization like Indian American Muslim Council and their proxy Hindus for Human Rights,
Yeah,
quite publicly.
there was a, I think it is not just the movement that is limited to the northeastern part of India, because the case that they were arrested under the latest case, I mean, that this was the this kind of Naxalite movement, the violent communist Marxist movement, has been spreading in India, and this particular incident, the final straw in this, was something that happened in Maharashtra.
It happened in a place called Bhima Koregaon, and we should actually have an entire show on Bhima Koregaon. I'm just going to allude to it, uh, but you have to understand this Maoist movement that is it's a global geopolitical effort, a very highly weaponized effort. At one point, they used to even receive weapons from Pakistan and China both. Uh, this has cost India a lot. This has cost that region a lot. Just in the last 22 years, more than 20,000 people, many of them, actually most of them Vanvasis, I would say, have been killed in this violence. So it's a very high casualty, high impact terrorism that that people like Stan Swamy actually promoted, and the backbone of those ideological movements is the removal of the Vanvasi community from the larger Hindu civilizational identity.
Yeah, and then it's in my view, so the conversion, either conversion to Christianity, conversion to Islam, conversion to Maoism, Naxalism or Maoism, are all tools to colonize the people. These are the mechanisms whereby and they're violent. They're violent, not just physical violence, but to deprive people of their culture. It's cultural violation, and so it's a violence in multiple ways, and it's carried out to colonize the people and colonize the weakest among us, because these are the people who whose education level is not as high as it should be, and these are the people who are just uh, you know uh, lifting themselves up through various non-profit organization intervention, the government support, and all of that. And here comes a new set of colonizers trying to oppress them. In that environment, two organizations that stick out, actually three organizations that stick out, where they're serving the community. One of the organizations is the Vanvasi Kalyan Ashram. Now, Vanvasi Kalyan Ashram was founded in 1950s, and a lot of people have devoted their entire lives to the upliftment of the Vanvasi community. So, Vanvasi Kalyan Ashram, if you translate it for people who don't know Hindi or Sanskrit, is is the benefit. Kalyan is like welfare, and Vanvasi are people who are living in forest, and it's an ashram. So it's a community to help people for the welfare of people who live in forests. They have done thousands of activities, hundreds of thousands of volunteers through the years, and they work and live in these areas, and they selflessly serve, bring education to these people who are in the deepest of the forest areas, bring healthcare, bring empowerment, all of that. And that is Vanvasi Kalyana Ashram. It's been in operation for, as I said earlier, for since 1950s. The other one is the Friends of Tribal Society. And Friends of Tribal Society has a very similar mission, works in different parts of India, and tries to do very similar things for the tribal community in India. And again, a organization that has selflessly served the tribal community for decades. I think it was founded, uh, in early 70s, if I'm not mistaken. But it has been in existence since then, continuously serving the community over there, and serving the community in a selfless way, not to convert them, not to impose their will on them, not to appropriate their culture, but really to uplift them, from educational perspective, from women's empowerment, for children and youth development, education, healthcare. And that is where so that we play a role as Vishnu Parishad of America. We were the founders, and then it was later made into a separate organization, but it was founded as a project of Vishnu Parishad of America called Ekal Vidyalay, one teacher, one school. The original name of Ekal Vidyalay was one school. It's a thriving independent organization now. This organization has been now supporting this non-traditional one classroom, one teacher school in over 100,000 places, most of them in these Vanvasi areas, benefiting the Vanvasi community. That is our contribution to the cause. And uh, we work through these FCRA approved organizations, like uh, you know like the ones that are working at the grassroots in India. So we have had a significant impact. People listening to the show, people who are all volunteers, who have dedicated their lives, have have been contributing uh, to the upliftment of the Vanvasi community through Ekal Vidyalay. We also have a program called Support a Child, which also has benefited a lot of people. So I would bring to your attention these two programs. Okay. And that brings us towards the close of the program, and we will do our regular segments with that. I would like to first, so any final comments before we move on?
No, Ajay bhai, we are running out of time, so we should move on.
Yeah, we should move on. With that, the first regularly scheduled segment for us, today we are going to do it in a slightly different order. The first one is the Hindu Phobe of the Week. Hindu Phobe of the Week is brought to you by American Hindus Against Defamation, AHAD, which is our Hindu and against we've been doing AHAD since 1997, and we bring out the issues where Hindus related to Hindu phobia, related to insult of Hindu deities, culture, symbols, etc. And so that you have picked the Hindu Phobe of the Week. You want to talk about this? Here you go.
Okay, so this is relevant to those of us who are in the East Coast, but it is relevant to everybody in America. As you all know, there was primaries of the Maryland governors for the Maryland governors race, and one of the candidates, John King, for the governor of Maryland, he lost the primaries, and he accepted defeat. He was way behind on the count. The reason his campaign is the Hindu Phobe of the Week is because his campaign before the primaries targeted originally Hindu American, now Indian American, because she's married to a non-Hindu, and I'm not sure if she's a practicing Hindu, Aruna Miller, who is the lieutenant governor's candidate, who actually is leading the primaries. I mean, there are still some ballot counts that need to be done, so the official results are not declared, but she's most likely going to be the the candidate for the Democratic Party in the Maryland gubernatorial race, as the lieutenant governor, Aruna Miller. Her campaign was attacked by John King's campaign, especially by Mariam Ahmed, who is our Hindu phobe of the week. She's the communications director for John King's candidature, viciously attacked Aruna Miller for just being a Hindu. And guess who also joined that attack? Peter Frederick. If you go to our Twitter page, you will see a thread on Peter Frederick, a person whose sole mission in life is to target American Hindus. So they attacked viciously Aruna Miller's campaign. They spread false news. They called her Nazi, wrote articles about it, but they still failed. And in fact, I believe they failed more so because of that, because people are getting tired of this targeting of Hindus. So Mariam Ahmed is the Hindu phobe of the week for her continuous false and vicious targeting of Aruna Miller throughout the campaign. We could have made her a Hindu phobe of the week before, but we didn't want to, play a role in affecting the voting patterns in any way. So now that they have formally lost and have been brutalized in the voting, they deserved it, and that's why.
And this is a warning to all the people who are going to target Hindus for being Hindus in political space. Hindus are not going to run.
And Aruna Miller is not even like Aruna Miller didn't even go around saying that she's a Hindu. In fact, she was her only fault is that she was born a Hindu and her first name is Aruna. So that was her only fault, and for that she was.
That is the extent of Hindu phobia in the political space.
Correct.
Today.
Correct. And the fact that this campaign lost so badly, it sends a message that you can pour money into it, you can pour propaganda into these things, but at some point it starts backfiring. And I think both Mariam Ahmed and Peter Frederick and their backers in organizations around America, Islamist organizations, anti-Hindu organizations, please take a lesson from this. If you want to continue doing this, the only thing you will achieve is more and more Hindus will wake up, and more Hindus will be joining the electoral process, and you will bring people like Aruna Miller to come out as Hindus, even if they were not planning to do so, which is exactly what happened here.
Exactly. So with that, the Hindu Seva or Charity Act of the Week. And so that this week, the Hindu Seva Charity Act of the Week is Support a Child. Support a Child is a BHPA's initiative, and Support a Child supports over 3,800 kids in India, many of them in the Vanvasi areas, every single day. And it's a very simple process. It takes about $25 a month to support a child in India. And they take care of the schooling, some housing, and a lot of other things that kind of go with it, that midday morning meals, all of that. And they are Support a Child initiative, and the Support a Child team is hosting fundraisers around the country. And this time, after a long period of COVID, now that it has subsided, they are actually holding shows around the country. And these are the nice cultural show. It's called Kanak, the sound of the divine and folklore, sound of the divine and folklore, and it is by the Kalanidhi Center of Performing Arts. And you can see that the shows have already started. The first show was just this 3 days ago in Cincinnati, and yesterday there was a show in Indianapolis. Today, I believe there is a show, next week. Next week there is a show on Friday in Columbus, and then Dallas, and then Phoenix, and Irvine, and everywhere else. Please note that you can whether you go to you can go to the show. You can also go donate to support child without going to the show. If you're not near one of these major cities, you can go to sacusa.org. That, and it's right here. It's a little small, but it is sacusa.org, where you can get all the details about the shows, and you can also donate to support a child. sacusa.org is a great team of very dedicated karyakartas, volunteers who are working on support a child initiative. And I nothing but admiration for all the hard work they have done. They started about 3 or 4 years ago. I think that they were supporting 700 kids, and today it's close to 4,000. And I believe their target is to reach about 4,200 kids by this year. And this is the kind of work that is life changing in a life of a little kid. And these are the kinds of bonds that that you create uh, with the people who live in the in the areas where the economic empowerment is not as high as some of the other areas. So please support this cause. It is absolutely a wonderful project, and it needs everyone's support. uh, so between Ekal Vidyalaya and Support a Child, I think we are making a huge impact in all the communities that we talked about today. And finally, Utsada, the Hindu good news of the week, and we do have one this week. Sometimes, Utsada, the good news is just getting to know our own cultural heritage. And I bring to you, and hopefully you can see my screen now. I bring to you this. There's Hindu dharma around the world is so rich in tradition, and people who live in many parts of the world don't even know, or even in India, people don't even know the rich uh, Hindu traditions that have kept Hindu dharma alive for thousands of years. And it is not just the daily pujas that people do. It is not just the scriptures that people read. All of them are important, but it's also the festivity and the celebration of being a Hindu. And those are the things that keep people engaged, and keep people linked to their religious, spiritual, cultural roots. And here is one such festival that many people don't even know about. It is called, and it is from the Hindu Press International, a Hinduism Today website, and they talk about the Kawad Yatra of 2022. And this happens every year during monsoon in Delhi. And they actually uh, it actually goes through multiple cities. Uh, and if you read this here, it says it happens in neighboring Delhi and all the bordering areas from Rajasthan, Haryana, Punjab. All of them kind of converge in Delhi with colorful clothes, and the matkas that they carry on their head, and the pots they carry on their head. And and you can see they're carrying uh, the uh, the gel matkas, so the water pots that they're carrying on their shoulder as a way of welcoming the monsoon. So this is the kind of rich cultural traditions that have kept alive. And the reason worship for monsoon, not it's a lifeline, but it's also our way of worshiping earth and our way of being environmentally friendly.
Also, Ajay, just so you know, this Kavar Yatra is also a Shaiva tradition. And a lot of actually all the people who are they are all come from the Shaiva tradition, and it's there have been efforts to made to stop this at so many points in history, including during the Mughals, and it doesn't work. It never works.
Yep. And with that, Utsada, we come to a close of Hindu Lounge, episode number 107. Thank you for doing this. I know you you take time out of a lot of personal commitments, and I nothing but admiration for what you're doing here. So thank you, Utsada, for doing Hindu Lounge, and thank you everyone for joining. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact. Hindu Pact is Hindu Policy Research and Advocacy Collective. It is an initiative of World Hindu Council of America, or VHPA. We come live every Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern, where we talk about contemporary American Hindu issues. Thank you for joining, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. As we close the show out, we'll play another tune from Decibel, who have created multiple tunes for just Hindu Lounge. So thank you again. Namaste, everyone. And here's another tune. Namaste, Utsada, and thank you.